Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Handing the Shame Back. This is my channel dedicated to all survivors of child sexual abuse in New Zealand and out across the world. As with any show, this is really important, guys. If you feel triggered at all, please stop watching, go to the show notes below, and there you will find resource for help and support. So look, it's my absolute pleasure today to welcome Rena Romano to the show. Rena comes to us all the way from Florida, and she's been actually quite significant in the survivor world. So in 2009, she went on the Oprah show and was interviewed by Oprah. In 2010, she wrote her book, her memoir, His Puppet No More. And in 2017, she did a TED talk on what she's about to share with us. But anyway, welcome, Rena.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really honored to be on your show.
Well, you know, survivors are all across the world, and we know that you know what you've experienced and managed to emerge from is pretty powerful. So it's my pleasure to have you and host you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So for our audience, I guess it would be really useful to know what type of child sexual abuse, obviously you're a survivor, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So what type of experience did you go through? Sort of what age, what happened?
I am a survivor. I trademarked that word here in the United States, survivor. And I am a survivor of incest starting at the age of 4, and it went on for many, many years. And as a young adult, when I was out on my own, I was raped by a colleague from work who broke into my home. And once the abuse stopped by my perpetrators, I continued the abuse, and I got tired of it. I got tired of being angry. So, going through all of that, I was determined to fix what they broke.
Oh, that's amazing. So, Rena, when you talk about incest, what family member are you referring to?
It was an older brother, and
Right.
I was 4 years old. He was 15, and it went on for years. My mother's last husband, he passed away, and so my mother had to work full time. It was myself and my younger sister and brother who were still at home, and mom thought that this older brother was protecting us, which sadly he wasn't. He was abusing us. I don't think that he abused my younger brother and sister sexually. I know my younger brother, he did not physically or sexually abuse them. He did physically abuse them and mentally abuse them. He was a narcissist, and he was just very abusive. So she thought he was protecting us as she went to go to work full time every day.
Yes. At what age were you able to, I mean, look, I'm sad to hear that, and I'm sure our audience will be able to resonate with some of what you're saying, because sibling sexual abuse is not something that's often discussed. I had someone on the show recently who talked about that as well. But, you know, I guess the whole issue raises what happens within a family dynamic. For instance, you know, regarding your mother, was there any conversation you ever had with her about this?
No, I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell anybody. I was threatened by him. obviously at the age of 4, I had no language for what was happening to me. I didn't know. He
Yes.
groomed me, he played with me, he gave me toys, he tickled me, he drove me up in the air like, we do young children and play with them. And so when the abuse started, I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. And I had no language for what was happening until years later. And I always knew that it was wrong. I could feel it in my soul. Yeah, the moment he touched me inappropriately, I could feel my spirit, break. And I just went into a very dark place, and I held it inside of me for years. And I knew that if I told on my brother, I had this sense, even as a 4-year-old child, I had a sense if I told on him, he would get in trouble, then I would get in trouble, and it would break up the family dynamic as I knew it. Even as dysfunctional as the family was, it was the only family I had.
Yes.
And as a child, I wasn't willing to harm that situation. There's a lot of responsibility for a child, don't you think?
I think it's massive, and you raised some really interesting points, and thank you for that, Rena, because, again, we've got audience out there that will definitely be thinking as well, in terms of how it affects them and situations they've been in. So I guess one of the things that comes to mind is this: as small children, we have what we call magical thinking. So for you as a small 4-year-old, the thinking is you are so powerful in terms of if you say anything, the whole family could disintegrate. And the reality is that we're not magical, but we don't have the cognitive ability or resource at that very young, tender age to be able to rationalize or make sense of anything.
Right.
So, yeah, very...
And I don't remember what he said to me, but I know that he made me feel bad. He made me feel responsible for what he was doing to me.
Yes.
And he did that for years. Yeah. So that's, as survivors, we feel like we deserve it. We're damaged. We're bad. It's because of their shame that they pile onto us. They blame us for them perpetrating us, for them abusing us. They make us feel that we are the reason why they are doing this to us. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, that's it. And you're absolutely 100%. I mean, the reality is these abusers know what they're doing. Your brother definitely knew. He was 15 years older than you, or 11 years older than you. He knew exactly what he was doing. And in order to keep you complicit and engaged and quiet, he had to project all the shame and blame onto you. And as survivors, that's what we do. We leap up and we catch it and we carry it.
Yep. Reluctantly, but we do.
Yeah.
And we don't know otherwise, because they shame and blame us into carrying their secret.
Yes. And isn't it interesting, as small children, and as a small child, you knew that you instinctively felt it was wrong. It felt wrong, and it took you to a dark place. Can you tell me about, were you ever able to have a conversation with your brother, I imagine, once you were older and through it all?
No, I didn't want anything to do with him. We grew up in the middle of the United States in Kansas City, and I moved to Tampa, Florida, which is on the east coast of the United States. And he moved to California, which is on the west coast. So I wanted to be as far away from him as possible. I didn't want to confront him. I stopped talking to him for years. And when I finally told my mother and my other siblings, fortunately for me, they believed me. My mother said, I always knew he was a SOB, but I didn't know he was so evil because, I carried that secret.
Yes.
So I never confronted him because he was such a narcissist. He was such a con man. He was so evil.
Yeah.
Just so evil. And I knew I didn't want to be around that anymore. And so I moved to the other side of the United States.
Yeah. Good for you. And at the end of the day, he knows what he did. So let's pause on that, because who we face in the mirror every day is the person we are 100% accountable for, and that's who we have to live with. So at some point, he will have to face into himself and this. But hey.
Well, he died in January of 2009.
Right.
And he died a broken man. And I know he died of drugs and cancer because he would not face the responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a relief in some ways, I guess, just to not, in 2009, not to have him there.
Right.
But look, yeah, congratulations on emerging through, because it's really hard. And I think fellow survivors understand that, just the journey, just trying to navigate your way through and emerge through.
Yeah.
So,
and I like to tell survivors, it's a lot of work to get from that to here, but it's so worth it, and we deserve it.
Yeah. So tell us what else happened in 2009.
Well, I always watched the Oprah Winfrey show. She was my TV mentor. I watched her, and as she was sharing her child's sexual abuse, and she would have people come on the show and talk about their abuse and how they were able to forgive. She said, if you have a story, send us an email. And I have a story. I somehow knew that I was going to be on the Oprah Winfrey show. I didn't know when or how or what it was going to look like, but I kept telling my friends and family, I'm going to be on the Oprah Winfrey show. And they're like, woohoo, this girl's crazy. And I'm like, no. And this is true. You can manifest the law of attraction, put it into action. You can create your own reality. I knew it. So of course, Oprah wasn't going to call me, hey girl, you want to be on my show? I had to send an email. And the producers are reading through, I'm thousands, maybe millions of emails. They read mine. They contacted me and said, would you like to come on the show? And we're talking about child sexual abuse, incest. And I said, yeah. And then what happened is, this is crazy, but I literally jumped ship to be on the Oprah Winfrey show. They asked me, are you available on such and such date? Because we'll fly you to Chicago where we want to tape the show. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm going to be on a cruise ship on that date because it's going to be my in-laws' 60th wedding anniversary, and the whole family's going on this cruise. And the director at Harbour says, well, can you cancel your plans? I'm like, no, it's my in-laws' 60th wedding anniversary. We've had this plan for years. They said, well, send your itinerary for the ship. So what had happened, we flew from Tampa to Boston on a Friday night. We got on the ship on Saturday. I get an email from Harpo on Sunday on the ship, and it says, we've decided we're going to tape the show. If you can leave the ship Tuesday when you have a stop, we're stopped in a port, we will fly you from Canada to Chicago because we're going to tape the show on Thursday. I had to get permission to leave the ship because the captain is responsible for every human being on their ship. So I had to forward him the email from Harpo and get permission to leave the ship. They had a plane ticket waiting for me. When I got to Chicago, they picked me up in a stretch limo. My husband ended up staying on the ship. I said, you stay on the ship because it's your mom and dad's party. It's their anniversary. And my mother-in-law was like, go see Oprah. Tell her I said hi.
Well, so you did the show.
They flew my sister in to be with me from Kansas City. So I wasn't alone. And then we taped the show on Thursday.
And so very powerful, and you helped a lot of people across the world with doing that. And then, of course, you then went on and wrote your amazing book, His Puppet No More. And
yes.
What led you to kind of release that? Was that a cathartic exercise as well as perhaps helping?
Oh my gosh! Well, writing the book, yes. Right?
Yeah.
It is very cathartic. My husband was like, write your book. You've been talking about it for 20 years. He says, you might have a revelation by writing it. And he was wrong. I had hundreds of revelations.
Wow.
It was just, it was very therapeutic. And here's what I want to tell your listeners. Even if you don't want to publish the book, writing it and then burning the story if you want is so powerful. But writing it out, because holding it in, even though I went on Oprah, by not telling anybody, by not putting it on paper, a lot of people keep journals. I never did. Yeah. Because to me, that made it real. That made it true.
Yes.
And I didn't want to give it life. I wasn't ready to give it life at that time. But when I wrote the book, I knew I was on a mission. I knew I was going to be on Oprah. I knew I was going to be a public speaker. I knew I was going to be an advocate for other survivors. I didn't know what it looked like, Gloria. I had no idea what it would look like. Something was pushing me. Something's just been pushing me all this time. And I guess this is my purpose. This is my mission.
And I think it's really powerful because as a survivor, you know more than any expert out there what survivors go through, what it feels like, how you journey or traverse the terrain from the shock and shame of it all to emerge. The interesting thing with writing, because it is cathartic, and some people, as you say, you don't have to write a book, but the journaling or even the releasing from up here, I imagine, and know it can be many, many things. So very powerful. Where can people buy your book, Rena?
They can go to Amazon.com and even, around the world, whatever your Amazon, it's worldwide. So they can buy His Puppet No More. And Amazon, I was selling them on my website, but it just got too expensive to ship around the world. So they can go to Amazon.com, whether you're in the UK or Australia or New Zealand, whatever your Amazon program is, where you're located. So they can go there.
That's fantastic. And look, you've raised something. There's so much I want to ask you. You've raised something. I was thinking about what you personally have found useful, just for our survivors out there. What's helped you emerge? What's helped you come to a place of peace and
Well,
I
I
guess,
have to tell you,
yeah,
even though I was on Oprah, I shared my story October 2009. I was still very ashamed about the abuse, about the incest. And after Oprah, I had suicidal thoughts again. I'm like, what did I just do? I just told the world my horrible secrets.
yeah,
And I hadn't finished the book at that time, but I did have suicidal thoughts again. But I knew I didn't want to die. And I was watching Oprah, and I think it came out 2013, maybe. Even after I finished the book, I still felt shame. But I watched a show with Oprah and Dr. Brene Brown, and Dr. Brene Brown said, shame is lethal. Shame is deadly. And I jumped off the couch and I was screaming, I'm tired of being ashamed of crimes I didn't commit.
yeah,
I'm tired of this keeping me stuck.
yeah.
And it was like, just like that I'm like, I don't have to be ashamed of their crimes. I don't have to be ashamed of my past. More importantly, I don't have to be ashamed of the choices I made, good, bad, and ugly, because everything I've gone through has made me who I am today. And I kind of like me, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh, please.
And this is what I
please.
want to tell your listeners. Do not release that shame of their crimes. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We can't change our past. Our past makes us stronger. Don't be ashamed of it. Now, if we don't do anything about it, that's what we should be thinking about. I don't want you to have any more shame about anything. Even if you're not doing what you think you should be doing, I don't want you to beat yourself up with shame anymore. It's self-sabotaging.
And you're absolutely right. And thank you so much for that, because listeners out there, take note of this. What Rena is sharing is so powerful. And I guess that the thing is, and shame is insidious. So it sneaks in ways we're not even aware until we didn't have that conversation, or we kept quiet when we had an opportunity to say something. So shame still will present itself, and we have to just be aware it's a sneaky little beast. But I guess,
Yeah.
what's one step you would say? Because I think there's quite a gap between having the shame and living the shame and not having it anymore. What's one little C step our listeners or audience could take, Rena, to move from holding on to it tightly to starting to release? What would you?
Affirmations.
Yeah.
And people think that affirmations are like, big deal. No, if you truly believe, and I offer 52 weeks of free transformational affirmations for survivors. They can go to my website, renaromano.com. But affirmations, really feeling the affirmation, I am worthy. I am worthy of being happy. I am worthy of feeling love. I am worthy of being loved. Really believing those affirmations, write them out, say them over and over every day. Whatever affirmation works for you, use them and believe them. and believe that the shame that your perpetrators put on you is not your cross to carry. They made us feel ashamed for their crimes.
Yes.
And we don't deserve that.
No.
They committed the crime. We must stop doing the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Hear that, audience? They committed the crime. Stop doing the time. I love it.
Stop the self-sabotaging.
Yeah.
I mean, I still catch myself. I still, we're so used to being a victim that we victimize ourselves. And we have to learn what we're doing in those moments. We have to have self-awareness. So affirmations, be kind to yourself, love yourself, journal, write that stuff out.
Yeah. No,
find a support group.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's really helpful. And I guess too, as I'm thinking about that, I'm wondering what else you would recommend as helpful tools that helped emerge or get you to this place, because as you and I both know, it's an ongoing journey. I think there's always going to be stuff that'll pop up at times that we'll have to deal with, compared to when we first began the recovery and healing arena, where it just sat with us and controlled our whole lives.
Right. We need to start having self-awareness. Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling depressed? And those moments and those emotions may be, legitimate for something you're going through, but are they coming up just because of the past? Are they coming up because of the shame that we're still carrying? A lot of people, I've heard from people all over who have read my book, His Puppet No More, that they said that as survivors, it really helped them acknowledge feelings that they were having, but they couldn't quite put them into words. Yeah. I've also had loved ones of survivors read the book and say, thank you. I now understand what my husband or wife went through with their sexual abuse. And I understand. And not long ago, a man from Australia let me know that his wife was a survivor. He read my book, and now both of them are in therapy on their own and then together as a couple.
Oh.
Because she's dealing with her shame and the crap that, she went through. And it is crap. And I'm tired of the crap.
Yeah. No,
aren't you? Yeah.
Oh, of course. It's time. It's time to that's why I've started handing the shame back, this channel, because it's time we started handing the shame back.
It's time to hand the shame back. Get rid of it.
And even you and I talking today, we're handing the shame back, and we're doing it on behalf of our beautiful fellow survivors out there. So thank you. Tell us a little bit now, because I know you also then went on years later to do your TED Talk. So tell us about that.
Well, something's been pushing me. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't know what this journey was going to look like. And I'm still on the journey. I'm still evolving, but I knew I wanted to do a TEDx talk. A friend of mine, she is a survivor of, I just lost it, but she's a victim of sexual abuse, sexual assault, of sex trafficking. And she did a TEDx talk, and I was so jealous, and I was very envious. I know. I'm like,
nah.
I know, but this is a lesson.
Yes.
And I was feeling very, very jealous and envious of her that she did a TEDx talk. And I'm like, wait a minute, Rena, you could do a TEDx talk too. Why aren't you celebrating her and go learn how to do a TEDx talk? Because I'm a speaking coach. So I started studying how to do a TEDx talk and how to give one. And but that day I was so mad at myself for being jealous of her. I wanted to celebrate my friend, not be envious, because jealousy and envy are ugly, ugly emotions. And so I started what I call a celebration list. And instead of being envious of her, I started writing down all the things that I've accomplished. I wrote a book. I was on Oprah. I started my own company. I started writing all these accomplishments, and I started smiling. I'm like, I love this.
Yeah.
I have nothing to be jealous of, because here's the thing. We're not all supposed to accomplish the same things.
And it's, to be honest, it's not a competition. And when you think about it, here in New Zealand, police tell me one report states up to 1 in 3 adults in this country have experienced some form of child sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. Now, I suspect that's global. So, there's room for all of us trying to help, because there's so many people out there needing help.
Right. And so getting back to my TEDx talk, it's called Healing from Sexual Abuse Can Start with One Word. And I'm not going to tell them what that word is. They have to go to YouTube and look at my TEDx talk.
No, that's great. And look, it's we've got to keep the speaking, and we've got to keep that going. I guess in terms of how things progressed for you, one of the things I wondered was, when you were a child, and then of course it carried on for years with your brother, what age was it able to stop? And can you tell us a little bit about how that ended for you?
Well, I was in my early 20s, and I said, stop, no more, leave me alone, because he continued to rape me. And then I was raped by a colleague from work. And then not long after that, I moved away. I moved out of my city, and a lot of people can't move away, but find a support group, and somehow you can say no more.
So were actually, when you left home, what age were you when you left home, Rena?
I was in my late 20s.
When you left home?
When I left home, I was 18.
You were 18, but he...
Right, but he continued to rape me.
Okay.
Yeah, who am I going to tell? I mean, I was so ashamed.
I just want to make a point here, because I think it's really valuable for our listeners. One of the people we've had on the show is Louise Nicholas. She was New Zealander of the Year, and she'd been raped and abused by police officers from the time she was 11 years old. Mm. One of the abusers, I think she was 19 or 20, and she was walking along a street, and one of the cops told her to get into the car. Now, in that moment, as an audience, we could be forgiven for thinking, well, why did you agree? But what people don't realise, and I suspect what happened for you at the age of 18 once you left home, is that you instantly become that child again when you see that face and hear that voice.
You fear them. Yeah, and they make you fear them. They make you submit. The way they talk to us, the way they treat us. Even after the abuse stops, it's the way they treat us and make us feel like we're damaged goods, like that's all we deserve. And so we instantly, it's, freeze, flee, or fight.
Yeah, trauma responses kick in.
Yeah, and I always froze and would go inside of myself.
Yeah. So I guess a couple of things out of that, because it's really useful, and thank you so much for sharing, because we do have people. I know someone in her 40s, actually, who was still in her 40s when something continued with her brother, and she felt sick about it. But the point is this: you become that child again because you were a child when it began. So audience, forgive yourself, please, if you're carrying any responsibility or shame around being an adult and the abuse continuing. Step number one. Step number two, when you think about it, Rena, it was conditioning. It's we call it mind control, actually, and it's why cults are so successful in gangs and people like Freemasons, because it's this consistent mind control, conditioning. You were very young when it began, as are some of our audience out there. The same words being used over and over every time this occurred. Of course, you then become responsive to the way you're spoken to. You're just conditioned to expect it.
Yep. And, I knew even when he wasn't sexually abusing me, he was physically and emotionally abusive. And that can be just as terrorizing.
Yes.
He terrorized me.
Yes.
He, by his emotional abuse, it was, I was terrorized by him. And I had to pretend especially like at the holidays, that he's sitting across the table from me and it's Christmas and everybody's happy. And I had to hold in. He was still terrorizing me.
Of course.
He would call me names or put me down, belittle me in front of the family. I came home for Christmas one year and I was so proud. I had my first business card and I brought a copy to my mother and I handed it to her. And he's like, "Oh, well, you just really think you're a really hot stuff, don't you?" And it was just, he was relentless. And that's what abusers are. They are relentless. They are narcissists. And they abuse, not just sexually, emotionally.
Oh, yeah. And that's often worse, isn't it? It's that emotional, that psychological is just so hard to overcome. And look, even you sharing what you are today is going to help a lot of people out there who possibly have been beating themselves up. Our beautiful survivors, we love you. Beating yourselves up because somehow you felt you were complicit because it kept going. No, look how clever these people are. And as Rena said, and I absolutely love it, they committed the crime, stop doing the time.
That's right, sister. Stop doing the time.
Love it. Hey, so is there anything else you would advise or you would recommend our survivors out there try and use or incorporate to help their healing and recovery journeys?
Well, affirmations, go to my website, renaromano.com, and sign up to get your free weekly affirmations and transformational messages. Read books. There's lots of books that you can get for healing. Look for your local resources. If I like to tell people, get help, get healed, get happy, because we deserve it. And, we didn't commit these crimes, and we have to stop living in that shame that was perpetrated against us. It's not our shame to carry.
No.
So find resources. I'm sure you have resources on your website.
Yeah.
I have them on mine, renaromano.com. And read books, do whatever. Even after I went through therapy, Gloria, years would go on and I would start having trouble with confidence. Like I said, I was jealous of my girlfriend and I didn't want to be like that. So I've learned, I've taken a lot of different classes and mental health and anything that will help you stay on a positive path. And don't beat yourself up. If you slip back and you get into victim mode or you have bad days, we all do. That's normal.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, very powerful. Thank you so much, Rena. Really useful for us, and lots of food for thought. So please stay on the line a moment and I'll just close out. So, audience, isn't she great?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Haven't you got a lot already just listening? So look, I will post Rena's links underneath the show notes as well, so that you can go straight to her website, look at Amazon, look at the TED Talk, go and explore. In the meantime, though, as you know, I'm self-funded doing this work. If you're interested in me continuing, please feel free to go to the donate section on gloriamasters.com. You can buy me a coffee, you can use PayPal, you can use Give a Little, be really appreciated. And then finally, if you would like to be considered a guest on the show, please go in and fill out the form, and we can take it from there. In the meantime, love and light to everybody. Angels are everywhere, watching and helping, and